Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. As you see, I am alone tonight, although I have Tanya's name up on the screen so that she has a presence with us tonight. About 90 minutes ago, she came down with a very, very severe migraine. And when she gets these migraines, the best thing that she could do is stay in the dark, stay still, and sleep. So that's what she's doing. Saturday, she's going to go to the doctor because she's been having some trouble with these migraines. Don't normally talk about this stuff publicly, but you're her tribe and our audience and our friends and colleagues. And so if you could keep good thought for her, that would be terrific. We have a wonderful guest tonight. I'm going to read her bio after we do the opening, as I always do. But Solaris Blueraven is putting out messages and information and a philosophy of how we can get through these times that is very important. We were lucky enough to be on her show Hyperspace. If you watch Three Beards podcast, as many of you do, you know that she was a guest with Craig Ansel and company several months ago. I've read 2 of her books. I have book reviews up. I am just in awe of her approach and what she's saying, what she's talking about, and how she lives her life. So let's go with our opening, and when we come back, we will get started. Here we go. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon, the preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, the couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. Okay, quick look in the... Hi, Jessica. Hi, Colette. Hi, Ronald. Hi, Michael. Hi, Lori. Hi, Mark. Let's get on with the bio and get on with this conversation. Solaris Blueraven, sorry, I'm a little rattled having to go solo tonight. I will settle in, everyone, I promise. Solaris Blueraven is an author, producer, editor, and public speaker with a professional background in covert technology, surveillance, investigative research, healing modalities, and technology. She's known for her experience as a test pilot for synthetic telepathy black projects, of which she discloses in her book series, Eye of the Remote, Black Operations in Areas Beyond 52. She's a professional psychic, clairvoyant, remote viewer, and systems buster for MK Ultra related programs and artificial intelligence connected to covert projects. Before I read the rest of this, you're hearing a lot of terms and a lot of provocative things, and we're going to unpack those tonight. Miss Blueraven is also a certified second-degree black belt and has an extensive background in advanced sciences and mystical alchemy. Her websites are nightshadowanomalydetectives.com, nightshadowanomalydetectives.net, or solarisblueraven.webs.com. That's for public speaking information regarding private sessions. We're going to have her tell all of that to you at the end, as we always do. But please, let's welcome Solaris Blueraven. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So,
we got to meet you, through the miracle of virtual technology, probably about 6 months ago. Since that time, read these two books. We'll talk about your children's book at the end that we read on our Saturday morning show. Your second degree black belt, your bio is very a Renaissance person. Which I love, I relate to. I get that because I feel like everything's a tapestry that, as you explore all these different areas, physical and philosophical and psychological and otherwise, you start to see patterns. So I hope we're going to talk about that tonight.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So Alien Intelligence. This is the nonfiction book. And this 1 Million Miles to Midnight, which was written earlier, is the fiction kind of version, which was neat. I read them that way. In the book reviews, I say to folks, you could read them any direction you want, but I kind of liked getting Alien Intelligence and then moving to 1 Million Miles. They're both available on Amazon. So I'm going to hit you with, I'm going to speak back to you some of the terminology that you use in Alien Intelligence. So we're going to use that as a springboard so you can kind of talk about the general, and then we'll drill deeper. So you talk about programmed delusional dream times, false virtual fields created by human programmers, astral parasites, holographic war, synthetic reality, hungry ghosts, entrainment program, so on and so forth. What is the core of Alien Intelligence, and why you really want people to read this book and start getting this message?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that mankind has been lied to for so many centuries and decades, and we all know that. But breaking it down on a more analytical level, technological level, especially where I've been with artificial intelligence, I decided to decode everything and show people what exactly this technology does, how it hijacks, how we can use psychotronic technologies, and also what we really are as star beings. The biggest thing is that we are descendants of the visitors. We are that celestial design work, and the DNA code is extraterrestrial design. I wanted to make that point because most people seek to the stars, they look to the stars, they look to ET, but they don't realize that they are the celestial ET. And that was one of the big components. I also wanted to disclose and open up the disinformation and misinformation in many areas of UFO communities. Not everybody, but quite a few. And I've been at many conferences where it's just been like, some people are telling the truth and a lot of people are just not saying anything that's even close to accuracy, sanitized, et cetera, and this and that. So there's a lot of components to it. The biggest thing is just to show the world what this is about. And what this is about is multidimensional awareness. It's not about living in this linear world and being sucked into the drama. They've pulled everybody into this vacuum, which is dead space. It's a dead zone. We can't live there. We cannot survive there as cosmic beings. So stepping up into the galactic neighborhood is part of that. We step up into the galactic neighborhood as I call us star beings to some degree. And that's really what it's about. Because when I was pulled into these projects back in the day in 2004, they were really after my consciousness, my spirituality, everything that made me a powerful celestial multidimensional being, whether I was psychic, whatever it was. It seems to me like that is the big component that threatens them. And a lot of my book series, especially this one, touches on some of that. Probably long-winded answer. So
no, I wanted to kind of go meta, and then we'll sort of get more specific as we go. So I sort of have an inverted pyramid in my notes here. So some of these technologies that you discuss, they account for things like schizophrenia, bipolar, the illusion of possession. I feel like there was an interesting thing. Q Shaman, or whatever they call him, as they were prepping for his trial, they identified something called transient schizophrenia. Now, I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I try to be well read and very well experienced. I know people through extended family who have schizophrenia. I have never heard of transient schizophrenia before.
No.
Do you kind of want to? Does that seem like that's the kind that's queuing into these things you're talking about here?
I would think so. Yeah, I do, because a lot of targeted individuals, a lot of contactee types get hijacked into that realm. Also, people who are homeless tend to be targeted individuals. A lot of them are. Not saying he was, but my point is that anytime people are displaying a potential for schizophrenic, bipolar, there's a hell of a lot of there's a lot of decoding that needs to be involved in that. It's not just a one little linear psychological assessment people need to do. They really need to look at the components behind what's happening to them, what they're hearing, what they're listening to, what's causing, or why do they even think this person is bipolar or schizophrenic? And if they're interfacing with machine technology, or they're being targeted with interface, it can create this synthetic brainwave activity where you have a synthetic brain that's in kind of like, sometimes it's in opposition to yours, sometimes it's a merge. It depends on the being. But in my opinion, I think a lot of the people that they're calling quote unquote schizophrenic or bipolar are literally just people who've been interfaced with technology or being hijacked and remotely brain hacked. That's very popular and something I have mentioned about in my books.
Right. So for our audience, guys, I always try to, by nature, as a writer, I try to look at all the different facets and dimensions. So this, whether, and we'll talk about it more, these mental disorders, seeming mental disorders, ghosts, spirits, shadow people, all that. We'll unpack all of that. There's another layer to this. Some of
Correct.
it is produced. Just like I loved X-Files.
Me too.
Because Chris Carter was so smart to go, it's not just one thing. It's the genuine article. It's government. It's our own misunderstandings. It's attention seekers. It's liars. And the way he kept that, it was so brilliant. So in 1 million miles past midnight, which I just
1 million miles till midnight.
Till midnight. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm a little
it's probably past
guilty,
midnight
you know
now
that.
in the illusion of space-time, so go ahead.
I'm going to quote you from the forward. A reflection and parallel of an event I was inducted into in 2004 involving exotic technology and artificial intelligence. Can you talk about that event for us, what it involved, why you thought you were targeted, and how it unfolded?
Well, it was an extraction out of my house. It wasn't beyond, it was beyond targeting. I'm not a TI, but the idea behind what had happened to me was, and we can go into the depths of it or just,
That's totally up to you.
Yeah, for people who know and have an understanding where my background comes from, this was an induction that happened to me in 2004 with a high-profile group of people involved in the band Rush, and also Mossbach and some other components connected to this district of criminals. And that particular event that happened to me extracted me out of my house, interfaced me with artificial technologies, artificial telepathy, synthetic telepathy, and pulled me into a different realm, a different world, a different existence. It pretty much vacated my entire life, my previous life with my husband and my beautiful life that I had built up by myself with my husband, and literally erased all that and rewrote it into this artificial intelligence, psychotronic weapons, sci-spy realm of a lot of different types of technologies and programming. And I took notes, I decoded everything. I talked to developers about this over the years. Obviously, I had to testify in 2006 about the event, which was, of course, shoved under the carpet. I can get into that, but we won't at this point in the continuum.
Sure.
But the technologies behind this is literally pertain to what you're describing and what I touch on in my book. The parallel spinoff was at the time when I was being inducted, interfaced, and being live feed real-time communications with all the different types of technologies extracted on and out of Colorado and onto Maui. I wound up going into like an alternate space of my own divinity and consciousness, but also realizing the multidimensional realms, the parallel realities, the alternate realities, and everything that was based on artificial intelligence, because the cosmic being in me, the consciousness beyond it all, was overseeing as a sacred witness. So part of my book registers all this data code. It just registers everything. It sees through the eyes of the celestial design work, the art, what I call ascended semiotic machines, and where I really come from in a sense of what has happened to me with the artificial intelligence. When you constantly interconnect people with technology, you change, you get reconfigured. And part of that was this book. I wasn't me anymore. I had been altered into such a different design work that I literally was guided to write about this experience and put it in my book. So I put it in a science fiction realm. I put it in the formula of science fiction, but it's really true in a sense of where we are in society, what's going on, this particular world in the illusion of space-time, that it really is machine language related in the sense that everything is artificial intelligence, and we are moving onto and into a new space-time, which connects into what I call the ascended symbiotic machines. But what I've seen here on this world is their version of technology, which is linear machine worlds, which has no value, even though they're using it for control mechanisms. And it is like a war with machines because they want everybody hijacked, reconfigured into their virtual field instead of ascending into a higher space-time configuration based on your own freedom, universal free will, universal thought, universal consciousness, which is what I represent and what I stand for on a higher level of my own divinity. So that's where this all came to into head, so to speak. So I don't know where you want me to go, how deep you want me to get into these projects, but people do know, where I've been.
Yeah. Let's start with it. When you say extracted, physically taken from Colorado to Maui against your...
Right. It's like a kidnapping. The funny thing is about this, it's a wireless, odorless, tasteless system. So when you're being extracted, a lot of targeted individuals have a similar program, but not like this one. You're dealing with people who are basically plants in the area. First of all, you have people that are literally there to track everything you're doing remotely on your computer, doing key logging. You have a surveilling that's going on, whether it's in the house or exterior, hearing and listening. Then you get interconnected live feed real time with the communication system, which is what had happened with me, which is synthetic telepathy. For people who are not used to this sort of thing, and I was never involved in anything like this. I mean, I am a telepath, but not like this. This is a hardwired interface dealing with live handlers, real time interface communication system, very, very powerful. in a sense of what it can do to reset the vitals. It traumatizes the body when you get interconnected. So as soon as I was interconnected, it took me over insofar as remotely controlling me, putting me in a space of trauma. Wasn't verbally communicating to my husband at the time. He thought I was having some kind of he thought that somebody had drugged me or something, or that my doctor put me on some kind of medication. None of that, of which I was never on anything. I never had anything wrong with me. So the whole thing was, this component to what had happened to me was literally more than a kidnapping, but the technical warfare that literally destroys people's lives and takes them away and just kind of sweeps them away out of their residence. And people would ask, well, how could you allow that to happen? I wasn't in control. And I have like almost about 20 years of missing time interconnected because I was so taken over by the program remotely controlled. Mossbach was one of the primary handlers. The band was involved, live feed real time. They can lie all they want. The biggest thing I have with them at this point, since Pert's dead now, is the fact that they never came clean. They're going to lie to their graves. And it infuriates the hell out of me because my life has been destroyed, gutted, completely flatlined. And this is not a joke. This is not a game. So one of the reasons I put the technology out insofar as describing what had happened and also putting my testimony out there and testifying and everything else. But it is a strange way to be extracted out of your house. Contactees have a similar kind of thing, but this is covert warfare to the max. And this is also training, PSYOP training, PSY-war training, and a lot of other things with remote viewing.
Yeah. Guys, viewers of our show and other shows, I'm getting a low signal message here. So just stick with us. But, certain words triggered this. It happens all the time. I watched it last night on a show I was watching. Can you define psychotronic, please?
Sure. Psychotronic basically is it's a signal interface from a target of interest. Basically, it's from the components of controls, remotely controlling, interfacing onto a target of interest. So you're dealing with a psychotronic program that's literally rewriting the psychic centers insofar as if you're a natural psychic, if you can see things naturally, this will hijack your psychic centers and start creating a stream and a feed of psychotronic images that don't have any value to the cosmos, your spirituality, your conscious, subconscious, memories, or other. This is a very dangerous warfare program that they're deploying, and that was one of the ones they had used on me in the past. This is not okay. But when I talk about the psychotronics, it seems to be their weapon of choice these days. So be aware, especially if you're a channel, a medium, a psychic, if you are into your higher consciousness, if you all of a sudden start feeling interconnected where you're seeing things that are way beyond the spectrum of where you've been, you better start looking at it. And I say that in a kind way because these guys are not about you and your destiny and your upgrading. This is about control, manipulation, and putting you in a different space time and also altering your perception of reality. It can be very, very schizoid in the sense of putting people in a space of psychosis.
Right, which is what we're talking about. So thank you for sharing that. Folks, one of the reasons why we do this show, it's like when we had L.A. Marzulli on a couple months ago, and as you know, they shut us down hard, and we had to completely reboot during the show. We all hear these things. I was on the phone yesterday with a colleague, a potential new member of the Red Thread Collective, and he was talking about these kinds of these very similar things, but we hear them out on so we try to bring in guests who can say to you, look, this happened to me. So it's not just something circulating on the internet out in the ether that we can all go, it's an interesting story, but it has nothing to do with me. You have a person very brave sitting here in front of you talking about this. And I thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So let's continue. So the subtitle of Between the Mirror and the Lens reminded me, and you acknowledge him in the book, Philip K. Dick, who had very interesting ways to generate. He used the I Ching and other things to develop his stories. He seemed like a very in-touch person. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Dick's work and how it has, led to your own, or is reflected in?
Right. I think I have a lot of respect for him in The Illusion of Space-Time, wherever he is. And I've also interviewed his wife, Tessa Dick, several times over. What's interesting about that is if you ever interviewed her, I suggest you do. But his background was basically he was hit with a lot of covert warfare, in my opinion. We had both done an analysis and are convinced that he was hit with psychotronics and some formula, different types of electronic warfare and different things that were connected to interfacing him. So he was a genius, obviously very brilliant. But my point is that I believe he was redirected into their world to some degree and wrote about it. And a lot of the technologies and information he wrote about in all of his books, including the Blade Runner series, of course, is mirroring artificial intelligence interface and a lot of the technologies I'm familiar with. And to me, that's one of the reasons I was really honed in on what he was doing, because at the time I could relate completely to what was in his works and all the books that he had written about. Because once you get into the world of the artificial intelligence and the types of technologies that are there and available, you change. you can't go back. And you just become more and more engulfed in decoding everything and writing about it and expressing it and showing the world. So in my opinion, I find that a lot of science fiction writers are very accurate about where they've been. I think that they've actually been in some of these realms and just write about it. But for me, he was very interesting, and I wanted to make sure that I noted his information. I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for Tessa Dick too, and she's out there. Once again, I would suggest you interview her. She's great.
Wow, that'd be amazing. Yeah, I was thinking of A Scanner Darkly. Do you think that the author of Cosmic Trigger, and he did a big Illuminati series, Robert Anton Wilson also seems to fall under that umbrella. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think they all have it to some degree. There's all there's a similar thread in the fabric of what they are, in a sense of being connected or having being influenced by some form of covert warfare and the type of artificial intelligence that I'm familiar with. So yeah, and when you mentioned the Scanner Darkly too, that's spot on with the scramble suit. I mean, I wanted to make that very clear that that's how they run the system, and that when you're there, live feed, real time, and communication, sci-spy wise, you can sit there and have an interconnection, synthetic telepathy with your handler. He's telling you what to say, what to do. Doesn't happen with me, but my point is that it is there. And I've always mentioned this, like, why don't they use it? I'm sure they do now, but back in DC with Secret Services, I'm like, why aren't you guys using this tech? Well, what's the problem here? You just want to use beta tests on other people, but it's a very interesting system, and it certainly works like that. But the Scanner Darkly was spot on, and you can't make that stuff up. He knew something.
No. Yeah, I was amazed. I edit in one of my lives as an academic editor. I edit some counterintelligence and intelligence journals. And I was very interested to find out about a decade ago, guys like Robert Heinlein, the Naval Research Lab, ODNI, DARPA, all these guys, they would put these guys on retainer and say, what's your ideas? Because we are so good and advanced that we can bring them to life. So I think the reason that I bring that up is, and I'm going to go a little sideways here, but just stay with me.
It's okay.
There is an abduction contactee researcher and experiencer named Daryl Sims. I have a lot of respect for Daryl Sims. So he says that, the difference between a contactee and an abductee is a contactee goes willingly. An abductee is kind of fighting, kicking, and screaming. So it evokes the Hills. Barney Hill had scuffed toes of his shoes, right. Whereas Betty was kind of like, okay, this is interesting. I can control this somewhat. And I see Philip K. Dick, Robert Anton Wilson, and very much yourself. And I was watching some interviews that you did recently in prep for this, and you didn't roll over. I know you're second degree at black belt. Was it that warrior training that you were like, okay, this is just another battlefield? Because you turned it, you flipped it, and now you use it against them and to educate others.
Yeah, I think it is the black belt. I think it's my spirituality at the time, to that just being really connected to source, creator source. And the work that I had done really paid off in a sense of being fortified. But at the same time, I was very traumatized and very trusting in my handler, which I should never have done. I was so open to being handled, which was like just the trauma put you in a space of just almost like catatonic. So you're just allowing people to manipulate you. It's a very horrible place to be. But insofar as just pushing through it, once I started getting my power back and stepping back into my power, decoding the tech, then I realized, like, oh, no, hit the deck here. And then I started becoming more of the warrior spirit coming forward, just because I knew I had to survive. And these people were out not to be nice to me, not to be kind to me, but to literally experiment, get their information, create their own templates, and utilize it with DARPA, Department of Defense, and all these other agencies that are literally now running with artificial intelligence and synthetic telepathy, and some of the super soldier programs that I'm familiar with. So when you look at it, you have no choice but to either, stand up and be counted, stand up and fight, survive, or just lie down, take it, be manipulated, be lied to, be harmed, assaulted, and everything else, and literally just let it all go to hell in a handbasket. My lawyer did say this was assault and battery with a directed energy weapon. He did say that, and I agree with him 100%. And why these people are allowed to skate away with this crime like it's okay to do, but you see what's happening on the timeline now. You see how the biodome is weaponized, and everything here is nothing but saturated in what I call nefarious radio signals and microwave signatures and everything else. So yeah, I could go on and on about that, but it does take a strength of an individual. A lot of people wouldn't make it. They commit suicide. And I think they were surprised I survived it, to be honest. But I'll tell you, I had many side effects over the years. I've had a lot of health issues. I had torn cartilage in my jawline from the pressure of the interface when I wouldn't comply, and they were trying to control, manipulate my verbal communication, my speech, and I would fight it back. And I have torn cartilage in my jawline. I have issues that are directed energy weapon related, and also some of the things they were doing to strategically harm me or put me in a space of vertigo to take me down when I would not comply with their commands. So believe me when I tell you, I've been a test pilot for this project. I know how it works. The sci-fi is extremely cool. It's extremely cool if you have a very positive person to work with. If you're there with synthetic telepathy and you're remote viewing or you're doing something as a surveillance program and you have somebody you can trust, it's a professional, it can work really well. When you're around nefarious jerks, it is a horrific torture program. And these guys are at it. So
these handlers, the nefarious handlers, I'm thinking of Manchurian Candidate, Operation Artichoke, MK Ultra.
Monarch.
Is it almost like a Stockholm syndrome kind of where they wear you down, they break down your
That's
personality?
the idea.
and
It's
then
like the
rebuild?
military. Yeah, they'll break it down. If you're powerful, if you're confident, they want to break you down, break you down, break you down, rebuild you their way. Where does that sound? Does that sound familiar to you? Rebuilding people their way, right? Reconfiguring you their way. But that the whole time they're trying to insert what's right, what they want you to say, or what they want you to believe, or what they, even with the programs like the memory banks. This is another thing that Blade Runner comes to mind. Inserting false memories, screen memories into a target of interest, where they're not your memories of childhood, but there's somebody's configuration of something in a control room somewhere that wants to interface it and stream it in. Oh, here you go. This is what you have now. This is your database. Well, it's not your database. And this is another thing that they do. So yeah, all this stuff is extremely serious when it comes down to the misuse of technology. And I love tech. Believe me, I'm very techie. I love it. I love artificial intelligence used the right way and everything else. But what they've done and where I've been with it has put a really, really bitter taste in my mouth.
Are you familiar with the show from the 90s? It only had one season because they mucked with it and they killed it and it became very agenda. Nowhere Man with Bruce Greenwood.
I never saw it. Well, it's probably my life story.
Well, it's worth seeing. It's only 10 episodes. It's very intense. But so a man is a photographer and he's a journalist, war photographer, and he photographs something he's not supposed to see. It's a totally staged thing. It looks like it's one thing, it's something else. And he and his wife go to celebrate his new art opening where this photo debuts in like the Vietnamese or Laotian jungle, something like that. He comes out of the bathroom. Nobody knows him. It's a restaurant he's been going to for 10 years. He goes home. His wife doesn't know him. She's married to somebody else.
Wow.
Blah, blah, blah. There's an episode where they implant false memories to try to get him off the track. It's almost like David Banner or the fugitive tracking the one-armed man. They're all different vestiges. But it sounds a lot like this. And I am very curious in predictive programming, right? Off air before the show, you and I were talking about, I've noticed that in order for them to enact the ritual, and it was 6 months ago, the DOD said, we're using a lot of AI now to try to, shut this stuff down. It seems like they have to speak it out beforehand as part of the ritual, speak it into existence, whatever they think is going on. So do you think that Hollywood, the storytelling machine, the church, everybody sort of, the media, but they're all doing this predictive programming to put it out in the open, what's going on in the shadows?
I think so. I mean, most of the scripts come from Hollywood, or actually in Hollywood, come from CIA or alphabet agencies to some degree. I think you're dealing with that component there. So there's that. But I see them stealing a lot of information from beings like us. So they're stealing a lot of data and then they're putting it into their screenplays and then they're utilizing it. And they've done that with Philip K. Dick and other people, obviously. It's interesting how that works. But yeah, I see that happening. And even when I was interconnected live feed real time, they were communicating to me information that I know was there. I couldn't see it at the time, but then it was there. It was all confirmation, all the stuff that they were doing. So yeah, they do like to kind of gloat and sort of express what they're doing. Like they're unstoppable, they're no one can touch them kind of attitude, but the universe has other plans. So yeah, I see them for what they're at right now or what they are. And their machine world is not as good as off-world intelligence. It can't compete with that machine world. So
I'm gonna save the good part of the uplifting, inspiring part of the story for later. We're gonna keep bringing the audience down into the ugly and the muck and the mire with a nice payoff. No, I'm a writer, and you gotta keep the characters in the weeds until the end. That's when they're victorious. So okay, awesome. Let's talk about, and again from watching you other places and staying informed with your fascinating work. I know there are some things that you're working on now, so I'd like to talk about those. One is cloned avatars and synthetic personalities. Can you define each of those, and if there are differences, similar, kind of unpack those?
Well, the cloned avatar aspect all comes from who you are as a multidimensional being existing beyond the illusion of space-time. So you have aspects of yourself in multidimensional space which exist simultaneously. Whether you acknowledge it or not, doesn't matter. It's still there. What that cloned avatar aspect is something you can bring in from a different space-time configuration. And it's like an overlay, but it's an aspect of you but more of a clone synthetic version of you that interfaces on. This is not their version, by the way, the covert warfare virtual field or anything. This is who we really are. So the cloned avatar is a big deal. It has been weaponized, or it can be weaponized by that type of a department, but it's not being utilized at the time. So that's the one thing that I look at there. What was the other one you mentioned? I'm sorry.
Well, let's hold up. So with astral projection, astral travel, lucid dreaming, those kinds of things, are those connections with your cloned avatars?
In my opinion, astral projections, not really, but you're multidimensional. So even if you're not aware, you're still connected in. In other words, we don't come from here. We incarnate here. We enter into a timeline here, but we're not really. People say you're born here. You're really not. You're actually you exist off planet. Then you enter onto a timeline here, and then you have the database related. So when we bring that database here, we have all this information, but yet we get socially engineered and brainwashed and swept away. So part of that is to be reawakened into the alignment of what I call avatar consciousness, and bring that energy, the avatar, which is be similar to like a higher self, but much more powerful. And that aspect of we are is integrated in here, but also out there. So what I would tell people also is to pay attention to your cosmic design, which cues you and dials you into the true space-time and the true field of perception, and also empowers you and it boots you up on a different field of energy.
Okay, so I'm going to pick your brain a little here in front of the audience, which I like to do, and that's why we call it. That's why we call it conversations, and not we're going to interview a guest, but have a conversation. So it was probably about 6 or 7 years ago that I was made aware through some teachers, through Tanya, her work with Reiki and all of that I spend a lot of time out in the ether, and sometimes I bring some debris back with me. Tanya refers to it as Cthulhu shit. It's sort of, I have these things that come back in my debris field. When I first started, it's a cool term. When I first started lucid dreaming, I had this sort of like manta ray thing that attached because I didn't properly protect myself, and this Toltec shaman that I work with said, you're like a light out there, and you're traveling out, and you're drawing in that ether space, and you really should be aware of it. I tried to do that, and now more and more, and especially in the past year and a half, and this is, I guess, the core question. I wake up in the morning, and I'm very confused where I am. I'm like, oh, I got to work on that project. No, that red folder project is not here. It's over there. It's in a parallel dimension. But the more I'm engaging with your work, I'm wondering if am I kind of shifting dimensions, or is in your work and in what you've learned, is there maybe something different or more going on?
I think it sounds like you are shifting into different dimensional fields, multidimensional space. When your vibration changes and your frequency changes, your state of consciousness changes, all of a sudden your whole life gets reconfigured to some degree on a different scale of cosmic design. So when you're having that type of a situation where you feel like you're in another space-time or something's coming in my opinion, I think that's not necessarily a negative thing in any formula, because I work in those fields all the time. To me, that's where you want to be, because that's where the creativity comes in. It's just stabilizing the field and being part of that in a multidimensional spectrum. We are multidimensional, remembering and just integrate it and remembering where you want to be on what timeline you want to be on. That's the biggest deal. But right now, there's so many fragmentations connected to what they've done to this illusion of a timeline, I should say, with the linear world, that it's fragmenting before our it's just fragmenting away. So we have to, in my opinion, focus on higher fields of energy. And the astral plane, you're right, it's a hit or miss kind of thing. You can have an astral junkyard, all kinds of entities and this and that. Yeah. I astral travel, and I think I've mentioned where I was one time with that astral projection, and it's been fairly positive for me. But I'll tell you what's going on. The aerial warfare is off the charts. I'm just going to mention it briefly, but the stuff they're doing right now, for people who have vision and psychic vision, if you're very psychic, you will see digital worlds all the time. They're not AI. This is an interference program being run deliberately to stop you from ascending into your higher consciousness, and they're doing it as a warfare program. Now, I don't know why people aren't addressing it live. Maybe some others are, but because I've been interfaced with technology, I'm very good at decoding what they're up to, which is really no good. So just a heads up for people out there, if you're getting that kind of a bombardment when you're sleeping. And I noticed it even if I close my eyes back, I think it was about 2 years ago when this first started, I would see digital stuff going on, and I would even mention it. I mean, but if I put some kind of any type of a filter over that, like an EMF filter, it would stop. And that's when I knew something was technological, because as soon as I put something on there that was protective, I wouldn't get those images. So that's how you know. There's a lot going on. Yeah,
and that's interesting. I want to go catch that. So Tanya automatic writes. She converses with something called the Council of 12 or the Council of 9. Other people have kind of named that. You talk about ascended masters, I believe, in your work. But there are times when she and I will try to make that content,
contact, and I call it a dissonance field. It almost looks like a white snow, jaggy, electronic sort of. That's the kind of thing you're talking about. They're noticing that you're
the way you look at it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different type of field of energy. That's definitely something. If you're seeing that, that's your psychic vision showing you what's going on an interference level. It's interesting because it wasn't very long ago. I was telling people I would look out at nighttime because I live away from people. I look outside and I saw this energy field running, and it was more like a technological field. It was not anything connected to ascension work or anything like that. And I was like, what's going on? Are my eyes getting damaged? Because they can get damaged from where I've been. But a lot of it was just technological. I was like, I could actually see the streams and what they were doing energetically. I mean, that's how wired in I was when it comes down to observation. So yeah, when you're seeing that, that's your psychic vision showing you what's really happening with the interference, and it's not you. This is something they're desperately trying to do against anybody who's a higher consciousness being. And even if you're not even working in the field of spirituality, they're going to try to derail everybody's psyche into this wormhole of nowhere.
Right. And I'm working on a book now for next year, and there are 2 chapters about the trickster aspect, and you brought larger complications, which is fine. I'm a big boy, and I'll just put on better pants. But this trickster aspect, some of it, it sounds like is this disinfo and these energy weapons and the distortion fields. Yeah. So one last thing, and we'll move on to a couple more things that you're working on.
Okay.
It was okay. So we were in the lockdown a year ago, April. First time we ventured out, I guess, was sometime probably the end of May. And we go out, we get out of the car, and we're in a huge shopping center. We're going to go to like a couple of stores real quick, get some things we desperately need. And I look out, and it looks like what I'm seeing, like if you took a TV screen and you disaligned it, and then it sort of pixelated a little, it was on the other side of the highway. And I was like, Tanya, I don't know if I saw a glitch in the matrix or what, but something for a second there cracked or showed itself to be the way the distortion feels too. Are you from, I feel like I should pay you,
You're so funny. No, I mean, that sounds valid in a sense of seeing, once again, with multidimensional psychic vision, and also perceiving beyond the field of perception. So you're switched on. Your DNA is very off the charts here in the illusion of. So you're accessing a lot more insofar as seeing beyond the smoke screen, so to speak. You're able to access a different veil of energy, different field of energy. I know a lot of people that have said when they were traveling on whether doing road trips or whatever, they start seeing a different space-time too. So this is not unheard of. I find that as soon as you start getting into the zone of higher consciousness, or you're zoned into a field, everything starts to perceive it. It changes, your perception changes, and you're actually seeing multidimensional space. And to me, that's a big deal. So pay attention to those in the areas as well. Whenever people have those events or something unusual that happens in a state or an area where it's all of a sudden it just shifts, I always tell them to get the latitude and longitude and mark it. And that's for anybody out there. Please do that. If you have contacting experience, abductions, UFOs, or what you're describing, we need to track this stuff a little bit better.
Right. And I think it goes back to 2009 when we had the 2.5 hours of missing time in Tonkin.
That's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, that was something. But let's I want to make this. I want to keep making this about you because we're already at the turn of the hour. Synthetic personalities.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you have synthetic personality based on the artificial intelligence interface. So if I'm interfaced with synthetic telepathy, for example, where I've been, they can take a clone template of a personality of somebody or someone, interface it onto my brainwave template, almost heterodyne it, interconnected onto my field, interconnected into me, and I'll have a synthetic program that runs as a synthetic alter or a synthetic personality. They do happen, and they do activate or deactivate. Some people call them alters, but they're synthetic. Okay, so they're not organic. They're not organically created. They're synthetically created, and they're created from here on this world. So that's part of it. And where I've been with technology, I can tell you, man, they did all kinds of stuff with me. So I had to really recode everything, so to speak. I had to really dive in. And even to this day, though, like I said, I have like 20 years of missing time because of the interconnection. Because when you're here in one space of communication, and you're running artificial intelligence, you're in multiversal space. I mean, you're going in different realms, but you don't have any recall of anything else. And then all of a sudden you start seeing different things later on. You get in data codes of information. That's one of the reasons my books are the way they are, because my data is really my books. And that's the way I wanted to express that. I couldn't communicate it. The only way I could do it was put it in my books and writing.
Wow. We're gonna get to that, the style of the books. The Orion Gateway.
That's my project. Don't mix it up with NASA. But yeah, it's are you frozen over there?
Oh, yeah, they're messing with us. We'll keep soldiering on.
Yeah, but don't mix it up with NASA's Orion, whatever they're working on. But it is
Yeah.
my gateway project. I'm working on it, which has a lot to do with a two-way, a cosmic doorway, which is a two-way door connected to traversing the galactic highway. It's an access point, jump point. What I'm looking at is a way to allow us, all of us as star beings, to just traverse the galactic highway. We don't need national security. We don't need the globalist oppression. This is about just calibrating your field and walking from one point to the next point. You literally don't need a spaceship. You don't need all the components that they're doing with Space Force and all this other weirdness, or even SpaceX and this and that. You just literally calibrate and walk through time, the illusion of space time, because you're going into a corridor which is going to take you into another configuration of other worlds, other realities, and other existences and other life forms. And why people aren't addressing this, I don't know, but this is something I'm working on. And not only do I talk about it, I know I'm talking about it sounds really out there. I'm actually working on it. I choose to prove this. And that's my objective, is to show people how we can do this and get it done.
Okay.
So that's what I'm working on.
So you did a recent interview and you were talking about this project, and then you said that the doorways were hacked by entity parasites. Now I'm going to share real quick. Tanya was doing Reiki on me. It was during the time of the Cthulhu shit and all of that. And these two beings, like, she saw them more like Star Wars stormtroopers. I saw them as the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica.
That's more accurate.
Yeah, and I was trying to tell that she didn't know Battlestar Galactica, so she was, making but they grabbed my ankles, Solaris, and I thought that my left leg, that the bone was going to snap. They put this intense pressure as she was clearing my field. They came from behind her, either side, grabbed my ankles. And are these like those entity parasites you're talking about, or something different?
No, they're not. They don't look like that. These are more like I describe them more than they look like insects, but not really insects. Okay. That kind of spidery kind of stuff too. They're definitely things that are entities are just like they don't have a really good form to them. They just look like constructs of whatever, but they're attachments. They're almost like energy attachments onto particular gateways or power spots where they're just literally sucking off of the energy. And also they're in the wrong space-time. So once again, we're dealing with wrong space-time configuration, wrong fields, wrong frequency, because once they start hijacking the energy field of anything, then they start changing the frequency, starts to alter and get a little distorted. That's the problem we're running into. Once we change the space-time configuration, all this stuff gets blown out. That's why I kept saying that was hijacked, because it had a different entity parasite attachment, which, that kind of a thing where they're pulling on the field, they're pulling on the configuration to create the distortion. When you see a distortion in space-time, that's usually because there's something there that's creating it. And I'm not talking black holes and this and that, but other things that are connected to more life form or an intelligence design work behind it.
Right. So you seem like there was a familiarity with this Cylon idea. What are those things?
Yeah. Well, all I can tell you is that back in the 80s, and this was way before my induction, I had an experience and I was out of body, and I remember seeing these things. And I was never into Battlestar Galactica or anything like that. Now I am, obviously, but they were very, very big machines, and they were very, reminded me of that, what I saw, but they were like electric blue and metallic, very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. They were also telepathic. And I remember I walked into a room. I had been astral projecting or something, and I went to this room, which was like all white with silver tables, and there were these bodies with body bags, with like sparkly blue body bags, and they looked over at me and they telepathically said, "You're next." And that's when I dove out of the wall and went back to my body. But I remembered it, and I wrote it down because it wasn't a dream. And then later on, I was like, this is really, there's something connected into this with artificial intelligence and different programs. And it may seem a little more primordial back in that day, but I thought it was so strange that I logged it. And now, of course, when I look at the Cylons, I just kind of say, well, it kind of looks familiar to me. Plus the synthetic telepathy. And now that the upgrade, if you look at the Battlestar Galactica, and they look like us, basically. And that's pretty much how it is. And if you look at ascended symbiotic machines, that's really where we're heading insofar as what we are about, because our body is biotech. It is a component of technology and consciousness. And the brain is a phenomenal thing when it's used correctly. It's just a matter of rewiring it into the true configuration, which, of course, they're not doing here. They're deliberately trying to sabotage everybody. And I find that to be such a disservice to everybody, because any life form here has the potential to evolve and ascend, but they're not, they're just running interference for that.
Right. So, and this, I think, was on your DVD, which is Eye of the Remote. Eye of the Remote. Where you talk about what you were talking about earlier from 2004, but you also talk about, and you have Steve Colburn, who's the chief scientist at A&S Research. So through L.A. Marzulli and just our own interest in research, and Tanya, we think, has some implants. You talk about implants. So alien implants, what's your take on them, experience with them?
Well, my implants were signals. They were all signal interface related. However, I was pinging everywhere. And recently, when I saw him right before the shutdown, he did another scan on me, and I was like, "Well, nothing's transmitting. I'm good." And he said, "No, you're still it's still showing." So, anyways, whatever it is, it's still there, but not the way it used to be in the sense of the full on stuff. But yeah, I'm a firm believer that most people have some kind of a technology built into them, which means they probably have some kind of an implant or a transmitter to some degree, depending on covert warfare and depending on if they've been involved in contactee. If they're a contactee and they get swept away into military abductions, then chances are they have an implant. Whether it's a signal or a frequency or whether it's a hardwired implant. Usually nowadays, the weapon of choice is a signal. They don't need anything because we're transmitters and receivers. We interface very well with machines. So all they have to do is dial into your field and then all of a sudden interface it and you're there. And they can pretty much strategically keep that into the field for as almost like it hardwires itself into the neural system and the neural net. So it's very interesting. But that's, yeah, I'm a firm believer in that. Yes, we have them all the time. And whether or not people want to acknowledge them, just get a scan sometimes. Steve Colburn was very interesting. And he's a friend of mine now. I didn't know him at the time when I had him out there in California and he met with me and I wasn't expecting anything, but I'll tell you, we only had like a little bit of information on that documentary. We have 45 minutes video of machines shutting off. The cameras kept shutting off. Things were happening that were very beyond what people could see. So we do have extra footage on that, which was like, what's going on here? Nothing's running. We couldn't even get it to work. And then eventually we did get some footage going. So yeah, wow. It's real.
Yeah, folks, so the more people you hear this from who are experiencing it, and I think it was when L.A. Marzulli was on, I was kind of surprised Tanya let our audience know, we've run some equipment over hers or, to that level. So again, I want to go back to what we started on earlier. So what we term ghost spirits, hat man, shadow people, black-eyed children, some of that might be aspects of psi warfare technology. So to quote you again, though, spirits, consciousness, and interdimensional beings are real. Do you have a method or a way that you try to parse out what's what? Is there a tell, as they say in poker, or anything like that?
Well, for most people, I find that if you don't have any implants and you're not hardwired into artificial intelligence, then chances are you have a very organic way of accessing spirits. The spirits, you know how it works. It's energetically speaking, you can pretty much feel and sense energies connected to that sort of a thing. Technological hijacking of supernatural realms is more about, when you see a shadow man, say you see something like that in your dream time or whatever, but then all of a sudden you start seeing it more engineered, or perhaps something that looks a little more digital, then you would look at it more on technological, saying this could be a psychotronic program. There are things that they do that are just basically hijacking the supernatural realm. And this has been going on for a very long time. It's not recently. So little things you can look at that keeps it more of a virtual twist, more of a digital twist to it, less organic, less spiritually organic. In the old days, we are the instruments. We didn't need all the technology to go in and ghost hunt. We would be the ones be able to just access everything. And nowadays, everything is technology. So we've got to incorporate that as well in the sense of looking and seeing what is the technology doing? How is the technology? And the technology can be compromised as well. Software programs that are being run to utilize and do an assessment on things also can be hijacked. So it's kind of a hit or miss also, once again, because you have to use your gnosis of understanding when you're accessing these things.
Right. I was excited to see in the acknowledgments for 1 million miles till midnight, Nikola Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
So Tesla, of course, said to understand the universe, we must understand energy, frequency, and vibration. Tanya and I have really, at this point in our work, we really started deep diving on Tesla as much as our brains will allow us to. We've been lucky enough to speak on some shows about Tesla and all, but you talk about a lot of different kinds of things. I'm going to hit everyone with some of the language that you use again. Tone, signals, sound modulation, geometric light patterns, music of the spheres, frequency, vibrations. How can we, as you are, because this is where we get into the happy ending here, folks, that we really are in control of this. We can use it. So how has Tesla evolved your approach?
Well, Tesla had all the answers, and obviously everybody and their mother stole his work and weaponized it in the military, globally speaking. We all know that. But the idea behind it, he gave us the information. He said it was frequency, sound, modulation of waves. It's all about that. So when you're changing everything through the field and you're using a different frequency signature or modulation of the wave, or you're altering energy, you're literally changing timelines. You're changing space-time configuration. And I find that that's the huge sequence to our evolution. In other words, when we change the space-time, we are there. And we don't need all this. And this is the problem we're running into, is that the configuration is off and it's not right. It's deliberately sabotaged by certain areas in global, what I call warfare programs. So that happens. But to me, I think, like I said, I have so much respect for who he was. And so far as his technology, unbelievable, a total resonance with the work that he has done. And to me, where I've been with technology, I could resonate with where his mind was at, because I don't know what was wrong with him. I know that I've looked at some documentaries where they said he saw images and then all of a sudden the words came with the images. Now that sounds like psychotronics, or that sounds like his energy was so merged in other space-time that he was literally interfacing as a machine. And I never really understood what his illness was, so to speak. I don't think it was an illness. I think it was just him in multiversal space. But I found it very interesting because I could resonate with that because of where I've been with the technology. Because once you go there, you don't come back. And you don't come back the same. It's like an astronaut.
Yeah. In the early phases of what became the Philadelphia experiment, he was involved. I think Einstein, who would tap and go into multiple dimensions, similar to Tesla. Tesla said that what he termed ETs had told him, you cannot move forward with this experiment with humans. So he went to the DOD, all the people involved, and he said, we can't move forward. And they said, well, F you, Tesla, we're doing what we want. So for a little while, he sabotaged the project and managed to delay it. Then they brought in von Neumann to replace him, and they the Eldridge and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's very in line with you, because people talk about how he fell in love with a pigeon and he was obsessed with numbers, and I feel
he's brilliant.
Yeah, that you just can't expect a genius to only be resonating.
Oh, no, you can't live in the linear world once you're in multiversal space. I mean, it may seem eccentric and a little bit weird, but I get it. I totally understand. Yeah, you're always thinking in patterns. Pattern recognition is a big deal. Patterns, looking for patterns and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's, because we're coming to the end here. So I really want to talk about, in your books, you're really talking about a big cosmic shift coming between 2021. So we're in the last minutes of that, and 2022, and a lot of psychics are feeling it. A lot of my friends who are very intellectual, they're writing technicians, they're academics, they're going, dude, the energy is heavy. Like they're even tapping in. That's how big it is. Spend some time talking about what you think is coming, where we're at, what this shift might look like, and how can we participate positively in it.
Well, the shift in the illusion of space, and what they're doing here is an inversion, as you probably know. So everything is inverting, imploding simultaneously insofar as the linear world. The weaponization of the biodome has been just off the rails right now to such a degree that their agenda is full speed ahead, and it's so self-destruct that it's not supported by cosmic intelligence, off-world intelligence, ascended symbiotic machines, or any of the other species out there. So for people to say, and I don't care what they say in Pentagons or DARPA or anybody else, if they think they have allies on planet, you are sadly mistaken. They do not. And that goes for a global, their global agenda right now is an epic fail. So when I look and see what's going on, 2021 is a precursor to give you an idea of where these guys are at. They're showing what they're about. They're showing what their agenda is. They don't care about your life force, your state of consciousness, or your evolution. However, off-world intelligence does. And what I would say to all of you is to calibrate to the true space-time configuration, use your mind, use your consciousness, and debug yourself in a sense of disengaging from anything that they're doing to try to control, manipulate your reality. And that includes technologies, and also bring in what you need to bring in as a support system. Now, whether that's a ship of light or that's a celestial group of beings you work with, bring in your support teams, and also calibrate to your avatar design. We talked about the avatar too, that step up into the galactic neighborhood, bring in that energy and start moving into different space-time. When I say this, people don't have to physically die. And this is what it really makes me annoyed beyond the word. You don't have to physically check out. You could live to be over 1,000 years old. We're in the wrong space-time that is rapidly aging us. It's making us go backwards and inverted, not to mention the stuff that they've exposed everybody to deliberately to poison our systems. Now, if we change the space-time configuration, we don't have these problems anymore. And that's my point. And the whole idea about saving the Earth, this Earth doesn't need saving. As you read 1 million miles to midnight, it's a machine. It's very intelligent, and it doesn't appreciate them trying to control, manipulate, and say, well, you all have to go, but we get to stay. What is that all about? Excuse me.
Sorry.
So
Sorry.
You're okay. You're all right. Bless you. But anyways, it's just, so anyways, that's what I would say. My Orion Gateway project is part of this new configuration. So I don't need a computer for it. I am the computer for it, and we will see where we go with it. But energy up, and don't let the SOBs bring you down. That's my motto. So.
Right. Illegitimi non carborundum. Don't let the bastards bring you down. And folks, we talk about all the time, keep your vibration high, keep your candle lit. My feeling is, if in this windstorm we're in, just keeping your candle lit is a full-time job. You don't have time to be in anybody else's business. Another thing that I was very excited about, I have been since I was a little person, the idea of humans going out and colonizing space has always been icky to me. And the older I get, it
Oh,
seems ickier. So they got this, oh, we're going to colonize Mars, and we're going to colonize the moon, and we're going to do this, or we're going to go out there. Well, we have this huge space junk. Folks, did you read? They couldn't even do a spacewalk on the space section because they have ruined the neighborhood with garbage. Like so,
yeah.
so they have proven that humans will take their same habits, and obviously it's not you and I and your average
No.
person.
No, it's not. The funny thing is, yeah, they're blaming us, but actually they're the culprits. Most of them are. Large
Yeah,
corporations. Yeah.
and what I was really excited about is you're saying, don't worry about it. The higher intelligence, the ascended beings.
Oh yeah, no, I'm very confident. Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to that, I mean, I know what's going on here, and it seems hopeless to some people, but I'm telling you point blank, my gnosis of understanding ascended symbiotic machines and how they are not allies of the people of this world as far as the military and the global intelligence. Oh, they're screwed. I said it before. Do not mess with off-world intelligence. These guys are playing the little game. They think they're the big guys and the big components in space-time. They are not, and they're in for a big surprise. So yeah, that's where my confidence comes in, only because of my gnosis of understanding off-world intelligence. So yeah.
Right. So, guys, I promised you a happy ending. To me, that is the happiest ending. The bad guys are not. The bad guys are not going to win. Tanya, bless her heart. Like, I love long form drama and I love to write it. But when the bad guys win, she flips. And I'm like, hon, it's going to be a happy ending. That's the nature of our storytelling. And she's like,
It is.
I just can't watch it. So
I understand too. Yeah, it makes
Yeah.
you kind of annoyed beyond the word because criminals should not be getting away, but they don't. Universal law, universal code says otherwise. They're not going to get away with their game board here.
Oh, I love it.
They're
I
not.
love it. So this is a good time to, how can people contact you? What are you working on? And how can they stay connected with you? Because you are I watched you on a show where they were kind of be sour and they were pushing a little towards being a little sour and negative. And you're like, no, I'm sorry. This is a happy ending. Like, we're okay. So how can people tap into what you do?
Well, they can find me at my website at Night Shadow Anomaly Detectives, and they can also contact me email at nightshadowanomalydetectives@protonmail.com. I'm on Patreon if they want to subscribe to my videos. I have over 50 videos there. They're instructional videos, very cool videos. We do remote viewing. We also talk about some of the things that I do behind the scenes, so it's kind of fun. My books are on Amazon, and you can just kind of track me in my hyperspace show and radio. You're going to be back. I believe y'all are coming back. So that's KCR Digital Radio Network on Friday nights at 12 midnight Eastern time.
We would love to. I don't think we have a date, but if you
I
want
thought
to
I had you on. Well, there was again a time slip. I thought I had you written down, so we'll see. Yeah, but I think you're in there.
Check that. We might have missed.
I'll let you know.
Thank you so much, folks. If I have been watching this low bandwidth thing the whole time, but we've sold you through. They didn't shut us down. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It gives us. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll drop it out and just say goodnight to the audience. We'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Guys, thank you all so much. Thanks for staying with me, watching. People had to leave. They were coming in and out. Got a lot out of this. Hopefully you're watching the replay. If you couldn't see the whole thing, I promise you amazing. And I think we delivered. So, Solaris is just amazing. Thanks to my brothers over at the Beards Podcast. And Solaris on, and I said, hey, we'd really like to get to know her, talk to her. And they were very gracious about that. So I appreciate that. Mark Eddy, I believe, had a hand in that as well. So there you go. Next week, Tanya and I are going to come back and we're going to share something a little lighter. We're getting to the Christmas season here, and we're going to talk about our top 10 favorite comedic paranormal series, TV shows, episodes, films, things like that. It should be very fun. We're going to try out some new technology here where we can use a PowerPoint, so I won't have to have a pile of books and videos and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pilot that next week, and hopefully that'll work out pretty good. Thank you all for your positive comments. I was so riveted trying to keep into my notes, flying solo. I didn't put your comments up on the screen, but please take some time to scroll through the comments after the show, see what your friends and colleagues and fellow outer realmers are talking about. Thanks again for the bandwidth. It seems the more the more important the information, the harder it is to get out there sometimes. Speaking of getting the information out there, Radio, you'll be able to listen to the show on audio only, probably in about 3 weeks. That's 10 p.m. every Wednesday night into the Outer Realms Revisited. And then it's also broadcast on Patriot Radio Fridays at 8 p.m. And they're about 6 or 7 or 8 weeks behind, so you can revisit something. So we have some great guests coming up, some great shows. Very excited about the future. I mentioned we may have a new member of the RTC, a very brilliant, very well read, very balanced. So we're working on that. And everybody have a great night. Thank you for your well wishes for Tanya. We'll see you next time on Into the Outer Realms, where we go, where the paranormal and supernatural just become the normal and the natural. And I certainly think that Solaris agrees that we're headed that way if we just put up and do it. So thank you all, folks. Have a great Thursday night and a terrific weekend.